Hello, welcome back. Today we're going to be working some more on this 401. So we know that we have a crack in the block, and we believe there are some leaks at the bottom of the cylinder liners. A couple O-rings down there is what separates, keeps the coolant where the coolant is supposed to be, and I think we're leaking down past a couple of those into the oil. Now that's only sort of hearsay. I have not witnessed this. I haven't checked for that yet because we have this crack in the block. So we're going to need to check for leaks of the cooling system, but before we do that, I want to check compression because I want to see how, I want to get kind of a handle on how the pistons and rings and cylinders are doing now. This engine starts okay. It does run a little rough because cylinder 4 was completely cold when we brought this thing in. So what I want to do first is run it for a little bit, make sure that still exists, make sure 1, 2, 3 are running and 4 is cold. And then I want to swap injectors between, say, 3 and 4 and see if the problem goes with the injector or the problem stays with the cylinder. I suspect the problem is injector related, but it could be anything. So we're going to swap injectors between 3 and 4, see where we're at that point, and then we're going to do a compression check on this thing. But first, I need to take off this hood. So I think we'll just, if I can get these. We have fuel tank and radiator. I'm just going to put these over here for safekeeping. Now this hood is, it's not light. It's not crazy heavy, but it's kind of cumbersome and it has sharp edges. So I'm going to use gloves. Let's see, I'm going to climb up over on the other side. We'll see if I can get this, if I can take it off myself without the use of the forklift. I am perfectly fine using the forklift, and I just might. But first, see if I can, oh, it's hung up over here on something. There we go. Hey, we did it. Okay. That's not too bad. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. All right. Oof. Let's just stick this in the bucket for now. Okay. So, boy, it's a big old muffler sitting in my way. You got a lot of little pine needles in there. I think I'm going to put the fuel cap and the radiator cap back on. Just because I think it's the right thing to do. Let's see. That's the fuel. That's the radiator. All right. So now let me come up with a plan. So what we did before, let me get you in here so you can get a little bit closer look. Get these gloves off. I don't need those anymore. So we went through that pump before. That's a whole series of videos. I'll put those links in the description. But what we're going to do here is take a closer look at those injectors and swap a few of these around and probably do a compression check because this one is the one that's cold and the other 3 seem to be okay. So let's go ahead and fire this thing up. Actually, before we do that, I'm going to open the door because I'd rather not, asphyxiate myself. get some fresh air in here. I'm gonna go over the other side. I got my welding tanks in the way. Got a few other projects going on right now, so I got a couple things that are sitting out. All right, so let's fire this thing up for a little bit. We are in neutral. Crack it open a hair. And here we go. Well, if you could understand my my sign language, this was me trying to tell you that that cylinder was cold. So here we have, that one's hot to the touch, number 1. Number 2 is hot to the touch. Number 3 is hot to the touch. 3 is not quite as hot as the others, but 4 is stone cold. But 3 is definitely firing. So let's swap out 3 and 4, see what happens. All right, I think you get a better view right there of what's happening. You can actually see more than you could before. All right, get my tools here. Isn't it always true where you drape an extension cord across the floor, that's right where you need the toolbox to go? Of course it is. That's how this works. All right. So we're going to pull these 2 injectors and just swap them. And then we're going to do a compression check and see where we're at. And I think those are 19 millimeter. Now normally when you do this kind of thing, you want to put a wrench here. But I took these off recently and I happen to know they're not crazy tight. So I don't think I'm in danger of bending them, but you do, if you're in doubt, you want to put a wrench there because you could bend that thing. Okay. Yeah, see, they're both getting fuel. So let's pull this. Whoa, that's, forgot about that. Okay. I need to plug up those lines. Forgot about that return fuel situation. Get a couple of screws here. Let's see if I can plug that off. No, I want to plug it off here. Ow, that exhaust is hot. All right, so let's just put a screw in there. Plug that guy off. And how's this doing? Oof. Okay, that's okay. And then we're going to pull this guy off. All right, we're okay. We only spilled a little bit. So I'm going to get a wrench in here and pull those injectors out. And I believe that's 9/16. I got diesel on my hands. They're slippery. Whoop, nope, it's 1/2 inch. Is it? Yep, 1/2 inch. Now these injectors have already come out, so I know that wasn't very tight, was it? So I know they're not going to be a problem. At least I think they're not going to be a problem. I hope they're not going to be a problem. Come on out of there. We'll do them both this way. All right. Now, that should come out. May have to back those screws out all the way. These little hold down clips are slightly smaller than the threads are on these things. So that can be tricky getting them out. Okay, that one's loose. Okay, that one's loose too. Let's just pull this out. There we are. And pull this one out. And we're just going to stick this one in. Right there. Yeah. And there's also these spacers underneath those bolts. They kind of drive me bonkers. Ah. Tricky. All right, so now the injectors are swapped. I'm curious to see how this thing runs when I move them around. All right, so we swapped our injectors. We're going to fire it up. Now again, remember, it's going to take a while. It'll take a little cranking, I think, to get this to fire. Here goes. You know what I forgot? I forgot to de-stroke that pump. Doesn't sound like it really needs it, but I'm going to do it anyway. Crank this valve in here so the hydraulics don't get in the way. Sounded like it was going to kick off there, didn't it? Let's try it again. Had a bunch of fuel spewing out of there. Where did I put my... I thought I tightened these down. All right, let's try again. Well, did you see the little temperature gauge? Yeah, it was telling me that number 4 cylinder had come up, and number 3, yeah, there's nobody home on 3. 4's hot, and the other 2 are definitely hot. So, I think that kind of seals it that was an injector problem. And that's good to know. And that's okay, because I had planned on replacing all these injectors anyway. So we'll call that a good thing. So now what I want to do is get a compression check. So that's what we're going to do next. All right. So now we're back to doing compressions. So I pulled the injectors out. You've seen me do that before. That's not terribly exciting. Or excuse me, I pulled the injection lines out. I'm about to now pull the injectors out. It helps if you turn these a little bit. Gives you better access to this bolt. So what we learned before was that I do have a bad injector. And that bad injector is this one right here. Because cylinder 4 came up for us. It got warm. And I did have a couple leaks in these lines, so it didn't get as hot as it possibly could. But it got warm. That's really all I needed to know. So now we're just going to run a compression and see where we go from there. Well, that was my spacer. Damn those spacers. That was my bolt and my spacer. So we're just going to pull these out. I should have one of those impact things, but I don't. Actually, I do. I just prefer not to use it. Is that crazy? Am I the only one? I think so. I mean, probably take this muffler off of here too, because we're not going to be running this thing again until it's much closer to fixed. All right, that is loose. That should just come out, and it is coming out. Come on. Come on. There you go. So that's really good to know about the injector being bad. Is this like the only business in the world where it's good to know bad news? Maybe. I need a swivel on that guy. Forgot to turn my little, there we go. So at least now we got a little heat into cylinder 4. So these compression numbers should be, fairly valid. Which is also kind of exciting. Boy, that one is a treat to get out of there. I remember when I first took that out, that was a nightmare. Didn't want to come out at all. All right, let me get my compression adapter. Now for my Deere stuff, this is that, and this is the gauge. Now I'm not going to use, no, I do have to use a spacer, don't I? Yes, I do. Darn it. Oh well. I'm going to use one of these screws that came off of the old injectors. Make sure by the way, so this is the adapter I'm using. I made this out of another pencil style injector. I just brazed an adapter onto here. My gauge goes here, and I just brazed that shut and drilled that out. So let me see if I can use this old screw. No, I need to get a different screw. This one's just doesn't want to go in there. All right. So these are 5/16. I think they're 1 or 1.5. Looks like, well, let's try a 1. 5/16 by 1. I'm assuming these are going to be okay. Oh, maybe that's not going to work out. Is that? Oh, it's sitting there, isn't it? It's got a washer on it. Is that not going to be okay? So my issue is, whoop, there goes a damn spacer, I swear to God. All right, so my problem is, this injector adapter I have made, isn't exactly the same. The spacing is a little bit different. Let me see if I could show you. So you see the spacing between this part and the gasket, that's, I don't know, maybe a 1/2 inch. And on mine, it's much bigger. I have this other additional spacer in there, and that's all brazed into place, and there's no way in the world I can do that. Let me get a longer bolt. So we'll go 1.5 on the bolt length. And if I put a spacer, maybe I need 2 spacers. Let me try 2. Ah, that looks much better. So with 2 spacers, that's how it looks with 1. You can see it's not going to be right, but with 2, looks like it'll be okay. So let's give it a shot. We'll just see what we get. Light in there to see if nope, that did not seat. I can tell, can I don't think that's seating properly. Maybe my little adapter here isn't going to be good after all. Huh, that's frustrating. Huh. Boy, it sure looks like it's going to be just fine. Let me try it in this cylinder. Okay. I'm not going very tight on these at all. I don't want to break anything. Yeah, I don't think, oh no, it is seating. So why does it work on that one but not the others? Seems like it's okay. All right, let's take this out. Let's find out, okay? All right, here's my compression gauge. We're gonna run it through 10 times and see what kind of compression we get. Having a hard time turning that around to show you, but we should get 300. Oh, the other thing I want to do is I want to shut off the fuel. Since I'm going to be fixing this wiring anyway, I'm just going to cut this wire right here. That's to the shutoff solenoid. So the shutoff solenoid doesn't have any power. This pump should now not be pumping any fuel. So we're still in neutral. We're going to crank it 10 times and see where we're at. Here goes. Okay. Can you see that? That's looks like 340. 340 on that cylinder, and that's good. That's real good. For a diesel in this area, anything over 300 is gravy. So that cylinder's healthy. So that one's good. So we got 340, 340, 330, and maybe 310. So here, let me mark my 340. That's good. That's what I wanted to see. Yeah, well, I'll just write those down on a piece of paper. Okay, so our spread here is between 310 and 340. So 10, 20, 30, 40, so that's a spread of 30 psi, and that is 10%, and that is less than 10% of the smallest number. I mean, slightly less than 10% of the smallest number, but it is 10% of the smallest number. So even if this number doesn't go up, this engine has good compression. That's good to know. All right, well, what that showed us is that the engine actually has decent compression. Even with this number 4 cylinder at a lower compression of 310, it's still within spec because cylinder 1 and cylinder 2 were 340, cylinder 3 was 330, and cylinder 4 was 310. So that spread, you take the lowest number, which is 310, take 10% of that, which is 31. So the spread of those compressions should be no more than 31. So we have 34 is the highest, and, 340 is the highest, and 310 is the lowest. So that's a spread of 30, right? And we're doing a max of 31. So even with this low number at cylinder 4, it's still just barely within spec. I would bet that if cylinder 4 was fueling properly and if it had a chance to warm up like the others, that number would be a little higher and we would be we'd see some better numbers. But I'm plenty happy with this as it is. So now we've determined that the pistons and rings and cylinders are okay as far as compression goes. So what I have to decide next is what I'm going to do next. Whether I'm going to fix this crack or take off the oil pan and look at the bottom end to see if I can see leakage coming through. I think what I'm going to do is actually simply cover up this crack with JB Weld temporarily, so that I can better diagnose the bottom end. Because with JB Weld covering this, and I can fill it up, I can fill up the cooling system with water and pressurize it and drop the pan and get a better look and see what's going on down there. And what that'll also tell me is if there's other leaks, if there's another crack. Because if there's another crack deeper in this engine that I can't fix, then this engine's gone, and we're going to put that gasser in here. So now we're in pretty good shape. So now you can easily see that crack. It's all along here. It propagates on the top, and then comes right on this radius, and then comes down into the face and comes right down here. So cracks in, cast iron, I've had pretty good luck using stitching pins, fixing cracks in cast iron. But the problem with this is that if I put a pin in here and pins in here, these are on the sort of front face of this casting, this sort of front plane. Pins in here would go just fine. But as soon as we started rotating into this radius and even more vertically, those pins exert a spreading force. If I put a pin in here, it would have to go in vertically, it would spread this crack out a little more, I think. I mean, that's just a wild guess. So anyway, I think I'm going to be brazing this crack, but for now, I'm going to clean this up, and we're going to cover that up with some JB Weld so we can get to the bottom. Anyway, I think that's it for today. I have a few more things to do, and the clock is ticking. I got to get a few things done. So anyway, thanks for watching. I appreciate that you're here. And for all those people watching who aren't subscribers, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It actually does help me out. All right, take care. Thanks.